Okay, your name?
Essa.
Essa, yeah? Saying your name.
The Gambian living in the UK for the
Yeah.
past 25 years.
Okay, so, yeah, Essa from Gambia. So, like a lot of people, they don't like to go on camera. But he's going to tell us about Gambia. You've been here 25 years, Essa?
Yeah.
In Liverpool, Toxteth?
No. Well, Toxteth, I've been here since 2018. I was living in Beckenhead.
Okay.
I lived in Beckenhead for a while. I've got 3 kids over there.
Okay.
Partner, 3 boys. But like I was saying in regards to, what are you saying? Africa,
Gambia.
Gambia,
Yeah, what's the population, do you know?
This is just over 2 million people now. It's a very
Okay.
tiny place. It's the smallest mainland African country.
Okay.
Very, very small, but quite peaceful as well.
Okay.
People are generally peaceful, happy people.
Okay.
You always have the odd point, but on the whole, people are really lovely. There's a name they call the Smiling Coast.
Okay,
The Smiling
because
Coast of Africa.
everybody always smiling.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember about 15 years ago, one of my friends went, and I think back then they were starting to do a lot of development. So I should imagine in the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, people are, but there is development going on, obviously. Not just as much as other countries. But, I'm sure, because Gambia, we don't have much resources, and it's quite a very small, if you look at it in the map of Africa, it looks like a tiny finger inside of Senegal.
Okay.
So it's it's basically inside of Senegal, but by one side, which is the Atlantic Ocean, but it's covered by Senegal on 3 sides.
Okay.
So, pre-colonial days, it is still now called the Senegambia region.
Senegambia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because back in the days, it used to be Senegambia. It's only when the French and the British colonial, powers came in, that's how they divided those 2 countries.
Okay.
One became an English speaking and the other one became a French speaking, which is Senegal.
Okay.
But up to this day, we share the same names, the same culture, the same families. Like I've got family in Senegal. Senegalese got families in the Gambia. We share the same names, the same food. Basically, one people like.
So it got divided. The French took
Senegal.
So what was it before? Sorry, before. So Gambia used to be called Senegambia.
Yeah, Senegal and Gambia were Senegambia.
How long ago was that?
Well, that was long time. Still up to this day, people still use that.
Senegambia.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Well,
so
go and type it on the region. That's the Senegal Gambia region.
I believe you. So you're talking 50, 60 years ago.
Even
before
more than that, because the colonial era ended about 60 years ago.
Okay, so
way before that, but still to the local people, it is still called the Senegambia region.
Okay. It's like, for example, Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
But now it's Slovakia and Czech.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the division.
Yeah.
Unity is the key.
Yeah.
That's what we need more of in the world.
But in a case, like, it could have been, if it was one, like, for instance, if the French did colonize the Gambia, and then Senegal and the Gambia all became one language speaking country, like, you know what I mean? If we were either speaking French or English, it would have probably been one country. It wouldn't be 2. Because,
okay.
The proximity is too close. But when it comes to development wise, it's like Senegal is like 50 years ahead, of the Gambia in terms of development, you know what I mean?
Which is 50
years of development ahead of the Gambia.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of infrastructure, government-wise.
So the Senegal part is 50 years ahead?
Yeah.
So why is that then?
Well, that's a good question, because in Africa, there's this thing like people don't even normally talk about. When you go to French colonized countries in Africa, they all tend to be more developed than the English speaking or the English colonized countries.
Okay, that's interesting.
Find out, we go and do some research about this.
So
I'm going on YouTube and people.
So I believe you, but I'm just trying to think, because have you ever been to France?
No.
Okay, I haven't. So But my understanding is they're both, obviously the British is up there with the French.
Yeah.
So why?
Well, that's a good question. Why? Because for all the places that Great Britain colonized, or
Yeah.
United Kingdom colonized, you go there now, I mean, you wouldn't see much of a development compared to the French colonized countries.
Okay, that's very interesting.
You go to West Africa, for instance, countries like Abidjan, Ivory Coast, they're all French colonies, and they're way ahead.
Way ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of development, standard of living, and education, and they invested more in the countries that they colonized in compared to their British counterparts.
Okay, so let me give it another example. Yeah, I had I'd done a taxi podcast with a Nigerian guy called Ben, and he was talking because Nigeria is like the breadbasket. It should be like the Dubai and the Emirates, but because of the resources, it's still having problems, corruption, etc., etc. Yeah.
Nigeria's problem is deeper than they could even understand themselves.
No.
Because it's a one country. Yeah.
Yeah.
So their problem, I think, is basically to do with
Tribalism.
Tribalism. Ethnicities.
But before we get on to that, the point what he was saying is, when they got their independence about 60 years ago, what he was saying is that the country had less problems and was running a lot smoother under colonisation.
Well, true.
So when they got the independence, it created division, and we're still having that division to this day. Yeah. Now, the point what I'm trying to highlight, which I'm not agreeing, but what he was just saying is that there was still some level of prosperity under colonisation.
There was. Obviously.
So there's always pros and cons, yeah? No one wants colonisation.
But in places like Nigeria, you have to understand Nigeria. What is in Nigeria? Nigeria is
very rich.
Yeah.
Minerals, resources.
So it would have been inevitable for them not to have some bit of, you know what I mean?
So I think what they've done, they've given independence, but indirectly to multinationals, corporations, they've got influence within the resources.
Well,
same with what's happening in Burkina Faso.
Yeah. Well, they could change it. Like I said,
they could Faso, what?
They could change it. They could change all those, all the trend, because that's what Traore came and did.
Yeah.
He changed the trends, and listen, all these multinationals coming here, giving us peanuts, like in terms of what they're taking out of our country, needs us, everything has to be renegotiated again.
That's only a few countries. You've got Niger, Mali, you've got Senegal, I think.
Yeah.
It was doing that, but most of the African countries are not joining.
They're not.
No.
Because of, the problem in Africa, mainly the problem is this African Union and this ECOWAS. They're all they're enemies of African states.
Okay.
They're not helping Africa. I don't know. They don't know the purpose of their organization. Like, what was it created for? Like,
okay.
Because I mean, they should have stood up to these things. Like, when it comes to trade, international trade negotiations. Like, you know what I mean? For Africa, in fact, like, do you know that most of these African produce are not allowed to be sold in the European markets? Do you know anything about that?
Directly, the countries themselves directly can't sell.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't specifically, but I can understand there's mechanisms like that.
Why is that when they're not helping your farmers because of these EU treaties?
Yeah.
Like the EU,
because it's a monopoly.
Yeah.
And it's helping other specific countries around the world basically keep Africa from growing.
Okay, well, we Africa, we have something that these people need also.
Of course.
When they come for those things, how about we say, let's go back to the drawing board? Okay, since you want this and this and this and this from us, how about you make this and this and this and this possible for us too? You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
So what about the Chinese and the Russians?
Well, the Chinese are doing more in Africa now, and even Russia. They're not just looting the place. For lack of better word, they're not looting the place. They're investing in people. They're investing in infrastructure. They're investing in jobs. Like, you know what I mean?
Do you feel you get a better deal with the Chinese?
Well, to be honest, I would rather get a deal because Africans cannot go to China and do what the Chinese are doing in Africa.
Yeah.
I might be stupid for saying this, but I'm not type to believe that we Africans should be able to. We shouldn't even have to wait for China to come and do these things for us. Okay, we need their expertise, we need their technology, we need so many things from them.
Yeah.
But the motivation, you know what I mean? One of the leadership has to come from within, like, you know what I mean? We don't have to wait for other superpowers to come in and give us terms and agreement, terms and conditions for them to have this business. Can you stop over there, that white van, you know, that white minivan on the side?
Up there, yeah?
Yeah, or here, you know, if you can. You know.
Are you okay
Yeah,
here?
I'm okay, you know.
Okay, well, it was good.
It was really good talking to you,
Yeah.
brother. But you know, the African problems, we blame everyone else but ourselves. So.
No, good point.
You know.
And this taxi podcast, it's about perspectives, and it's not about, you know, forcing people's beliefs. It's just about
It's good,
a
it's good,
sensible
you know.
exchange
Yeah, that's
and
very
conversation.
What is it? Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, I'll give you the details now.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
But yeah, I'll put a link and a description
That would be good, like, you know.
to like things going on in Gambia, just to create more awareness.